The more and more I get involved within the Assassin's Creed community, because I've really been getting into these games recently, over the last few months predominantly, so I would be considered a new gen fan, I guess they would call it. And one thing I noticed is that a lot of times the fans genuinely are some of the most toxic people. Seriously, you cannot make any sort of ranking, you can't have any sort of differentiating opinion without people essentially blasting it for you. And generally, people fall into one of two categories. You either get the older fans, right? The people who have been around since the year 2007 when Assassin's Creed 1 first released. Then you get the people in the separate boat who are new gens, probably became fans around the time of like AC Valhalla or possibly Assassin's Creed Odyssey, around that time frame. And ever since then, there's been this massive divide between the RPG style games and the old style games where some people love the huge open world RPG experience, which are the newer games, but they don't necessarily tie into the Assassin's Creed lore all that well. And then you get the older games where the gameplay isn't as good, it's not quite as sharp, like let's just be honest, like the newer games have better gameplay, at least in my opinion, where I found the older games were a lot more counter spam simulators. But the stories were told a lot better, right? Assassin's Creed 1, as boring as Altair he was kind of a bit boring at the start, but he does kind of grow throughout the course of the game and start questioning things more. Obviously, the Ezio collection. I don't even think I need to speak on how great Ezio is. Anything that I could say in order to describe him has already been said, right? Then you got Assassin's Creed 3, where Connor as the main protagonist isn't like amazing. He's not like some amazing character. Now, people have said a lot that if you play the Homestead missions, you will change your opinion. So maybe at some point, I've got to go back and actually do that. But in the main story, the one area where you are meant to attract people, he was a bit bland. But they did do a really good job with the ending of Desmond's story. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but at least it was an intriguing ending. At least you got to play as him in certain combat sequences. But it did feel like Assassin's Creed 3 was a bit rushed, but overall did have some very good storytelling. Then I would say from Black Flag onward was where this shift started to come in, as to it being a more about it being a huge open world, as opposed to it being the lore about assassins and Templars who are both trying to hunt the same thing, which is the Apple of Eden. It seemed like the Assassin's Creed franchise kind of lost some of that identity along the way. So what I would say is, like I said before, people generally sit in those one or two boats. And I watched a video. This video is inspired by the Hidden One, who is a fantastic Assassin's Creed content creator, and he does make other sort of videos as well. But I predominantly know him through that. But I got this video idea through him because I wanted to elaborate on some of that ideology that the Assassin's Creed community, generally speaking, is just extremely toxic. And it's like no matter how you feel about a specific game, someone is always going to get extremely mad at you about it. And like I said, there are like the two different groups of people, and I tend to fall into the belief that the story of the older games are better, but the gameplay and the RPGs are better, and I think they need to find a way to balance the two out, that is why I'm surprised that like a game like Mirage isn't more widely loved, because I think it has some of that gameplay from the RPGs, but it has a bit of a shorter story, like the older games did, and kind of did what the older games were trying to do, but I guess because people didn't connect with Basim in the same way, and I haven't played Mirage yet, I don't know how good that was, but I do know it was meant to kind of be more of a back to roots sort of game, but the thing is with that game, it didn't help that was originally supposed to be a Valhalla DLC, so that's a little bit of a frustration, I guess you could say, but the overall community itself, I think really needs to like take a huge step back and realize that we all do like different things. And I'm someone who's more of a fan of the older games. I tend to side on that sort of side of the argument, I guess you could say. But that's because I appreciate the lore and the effort that went into those games. And don't get me wrong, the RPGs aren't bad games. I actually have Assassin's Creed Origins as the second best AC game I've played the franchise. I believe I've played 9 of them now, and I have Origins up at the number 2 spot, because it was really good. It had a really good mixture of good gameplay, and it told a fantastic origin story. But also, I'm a person that generally believes with a lot of things in life, but even in this case, that the best answers, generally speaking, is somewhere in the middle. I don't like to think that this type of game is bad and this type of game is good. I like to think that they all have their own qualities and they all have their own negatives. The older games, not as good of gameplay, in my opinion, but better storytelling. The newer games seem to lack a lot of that storytelling, but seem to have really good gameplay, right? And even the newer games didn't have the best gameplay, and some of the older games didn't have the best stories, but they had good qualities, each and every single one of them, to make up for those issues, if that makes any sense. So I kind of think that, like I said, the community needs to take a massive, massive step back, because we could sit here and kind of make fun of each other all day about this, but at the end of the day, we're not going to get anything done by just insulting one another. And this is something that the internet has kind of created in a way, and this is a whole separate discussion, but I believe in a way that the internet has caused people to have this toxic discussion groups that go on the internet because it's behind a screen. You can pretty much say whatever you want without any sort of consequence. Whereas if these discussions were being had in person, I believe that they would probably generally a lot more respectful, and I think you would get a lot more conversation done, because we all love these games, right? We all love these games for different reasons. You know, everyone's going to have a different opinion on these games. Everyone's going to have a favorite. There's going to be a fan favorite that some people think isn't that great. But at the end of the day, we love these games for different reasons. And I think instead of crapping on each other for having different opinions, I think we need to learn to respect that other people have different tastes ultimately. And I mean, that's pretty much all I really wanted to say on this. It's just mind boggling to me when I think about like how toxic the general community is. It's like, why can't we all have differentiating opinions? I really don't understand. Like, the people just can't accept that not everyone shares the same taste, and ultimately that's okay. You like what you like, and you don't like what you don't like. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you guys think that this is a very toxic community, or do you think that maybe some people aren't toxic enough? That'd be a crazy opinion to have. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a thumbs up, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Peace.